To start this video, I want to thank Square Enix for providing a free review copy of Octopath Traveler on PC. I love the game on Switch, putting over 100 hours into it, though of course I have my critiques. And I've heard enough people voice their opinions to understand that it's just not everyone's cup of tea. I found this may be a good opportunity for a retrospective now that it's almost been a year since the game's original release. First I'll talk about the PC version though. Unless stated otherwise, all footage you'll see is of the PC version. Square has a division of developers wholly inspired by the golden age of JRPGs from the 90s, the ones they grew up on. They're known for developing Bravely Default and last year's Octopath Traveler. Octopath was a game that the devs wanted for themselves, the target audience being adults who grew up on the same games but had little time such as themselves, which was a reason why the Switch was the original platform. When it was announced to be coming to PC though, my first thought was that's good. More people that were interested got to experience how fun the game was. Keep in mind, this won't be the same kind of port review as my Final Fantasy videos. Those games had research and many interviews done leading up to their subsequent re-releases and plenty of time for people to research the differences before I came along. None of that is really the case here. It even seems that the game was ported in-house and not by another company like those other Final Fantasy games. I'd still like to briefly discuss my impressions of the port though. So, with the Switch version, the game was not even running at 1080p and was only 30 FPS. The PC version, on the other hand, goes up to 60 FPS. And just going from the Switch version to this, it's just so soothing on the eyes. I don't have multiple PCs, so I don't really have a method to reliably let you know how the performance and optimization are. I can just tell you it ran great for me, as it probably should with how it looks. The PC version has complete keyboard remapping and controller remapping. No cursor is used at all for the mouse though, it's all keyboard, but the mouse also does act as a confirmation button. There's no native DS4 support, so thankfully, Steam controller configuration won't interfere with anything. So if you have a DS4 controller, you gotta use Steam configuration. The game is dual audio, of course. The volume controls are the same ones that were also available in the Switch version. When you alt-tab out, the game doesn't pause, but the music does mute. Not sound effects though, oddly enough. The visual thing that bothered me most on the Switch version was the shimmering or artifacting of sprites during fights with the panning camera. Now that artifacting is hardly noticeable. This port also made me realize how much loading was in the Switch version, which really wasn't a lot to begin with. I never noticed it took like a quick second for every battle to start. If I had to get really nitpicky, there's no ultra-wide support or 4x3 for that matter. I don't think I'd play it at 4x3, but it'd be a cute gimmick to play it at that ratio. Last point though, the potential for mods for this game is kinda exciting. There is like an 8-track 16-bit OST officially releasing soon, which makes me think just like, you know, a game like Final Fantasy XII got all of those soundtrack options available, it would be cool if they did something official like that, or you know, the community could do a mod for it. Octopath on PC is a perfect example of how graphics and art style, while not the same thing, can bolster one another for the better. The higher resolution does wonders for the pixel art style and the 60 FPS complements the effects. I'll admit though, again, like I've said in the past, I wasn't totally sold on this game's art style when I first saw it. It grew on me though over time. Now that that's out of the way, let's move on to the retrospective. For those new to the game, Octopath Traveler has 8 possible characters you can start with. Each character has 4 chapters of their own story. I know people that have finished everyone's chapters that don't actually know about this, but there is some more story that connects and wraps up the narrative of the 8 characters after you complete everyone's personal story and some certain side quests. The only real limitation is whomever you start with is the leader until their story is complete. The 8 characters travel together on a journey, and with each location comes a continuation of another character's story arc. This idea isn't a new one, but it's one of my favorite narrative tropes. Final Fantasy IX to an extent does this, emphasized by the active time event system, and a great anime example is One Piece. I think as it stands, the narrative is pretty good, though I think there are some changes that could have elevated the narrative to put it among the pantheon of JRPGs. The big issue with the narrative is that after a while, you can see the building blocks of how the game is structured, so the experience feels more methodical than naturally progressing. This also leads to some stories just not making as much sense under the idea that the party is always together. Everyone feels like they're individually traveling. If you did a solo run with one character, it would play out the exact same way. And also, really quick, another issue is that many people just didn't see the connection between the stories as they were really subtle hints. Maybe to remedy this small issue, they could have made the connections, I guess, a little more obvious. But I think the best possible solution would have been to have the party interact in each other's stories. In the game, if you go to the bar, you can start seeing the party actually interact. The interactions at the bar are great, and that's exactly why I think more interactions while in the story would have made the narrative much stronger. They get some engaging conversation going, and I wish it wasn't only at the bar. Think of dynamic story games such as the Mass Effect series, where dialogue from your party depends on who is in it. Even when you have to make decisions in Mass Effect, your party members act as voices of reason for each side of a decision. The focus of the narrative is being freeform in how you progress. That's dope. Having the characters respond to the player's choice of freeform story progression would be amazing. I know common criticisms of the game usually are along the lines of what I've talked about, and I would hope that in a sequel maybe they could improve on it in that way. Now let's discuss the gameplay. Octopath is a turn-based JRPG, and I feel it's a ton of fun. I am one to get addicted to turn-based combat systems, but let me try to explain what makes it fun and rewarding. First off though, characters have unique abilities to interact with the world in ways outside of battle. With a number of NPCs in the game, you can talk, barter, steal, recruit, or fight them. Side quests even incorporate these interactions as well. And on top of this, you can also capture enemies in battle to use in other battles. There are 3 core mechanics to Octopath's combat system, the first one being the job system. Every character starts out with a default job. Jobs affect your character's weapons and which skills they can unlock. Skills can be both in-battle abilities like magic, or passives. Characters can also have secondary jobs, which changes their appearance. These secondary jobs enhance stats and provide your character with new skills to unlock, and you can freely mix and match the passive skills unlocked by each job. There are also some secret unlockable jobs in the game as well. After the job system, we have the break system. Enemies have hidden weaknesses, and discovering their weaknesses and hitting them with them becomes like the meta of combat. It's like a puzzle you're trying to figure out, and breaking the opponent's armor should be your priority. And now to grow off of the break system is the boost system, where you gain a battle point every turn and can use it to enhance your abilities, do more potent magic, or attack multiple times. All of these mechanics lead to a combat system where you have a ton of tools at your disposal. I do still hear people say that they feel the game is difficult. Maybe I can't speak on it because I've put so much time into it, but I feel the only serious difficulty is at the end of the game. If I had to give tips to new players, I'd say to make sure to fully utilize the character's unique abilities. Capture monsters, utilize Alphen's apothecary abilities, hire people as Tressa, prioritize breaking, and have your party buffed for when you're about to break, as buffing and debuffing are probably underrated things that you should be doing. And taking the time to buff and debuff in certain fights can save a lot more time than you'd imagine. Also, stock up on curatives. There's a reason you can just buy items right from the beginning that restore MP, and why curatives are so cheap. People remark on how turn-based combat is a thing of the past, but some games that are turn-based have aged really well. Why is that? Well, I believe it's not because the games are turn-based, but it's what they do with the turn-based combat. Final Fantasy VII isn't unique or well-known because it's a turn-based RPG. Gameplay-wise, what makes Final Fantasy VII stand out is the ATB and materia systems. Final Fantasy VII Remake, while not turn-based, if we observe closely, is still preserving the ATB and materia systems in some way. Persona 5 and SMT in general, turn-based combat is basically a dual-edged sword, where you can exploit the enemy weakness, but they can exploit yours as well. Octopath uses the break, boost, and job mechanics to give the player a ton of tools to work with and how they can defeat enemies. It's a system practically designed to be broken, and some people have definitely succeeded in doing so. I feel I must concede to some degree, however, and admit that it's just true not everyone is going to find turn-based games as engaging. I did have a lot of friends try to get into the game that just fell out of it. I wish there was a demo on PC, but if you do still have a Switch, there is a free demo on the eShop you can try out. Now, I still hold Octopath Traveler to a pretty high regard. I still think it's one of the best JRPGs that came out last year, but I think it has some potential it has to reach before it could be considered one of the best JRPGs of all time. It's like looking back at Breath of the Wild and seeing all of the things that could be added to that formula or changed to it. It's a stepping stone, it's a beginning, and there's a lot of potential in a sequel to just improve upon what the first did in every way. As it stands though, today, I'm having a lot of fun replaying the game on PC, mostly because of how the combat works and knowing how to fully utilize it. Because when you can, man, it's really satisfying. Thank you for watching. I've been working on the next port review, and it's going to be for Mega Man Battle Network, although there's really only 2 ports of the game, so I'm going to try to keep it short and concise. And once again, I appreciate all of the support. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.